So something I've been thinking about for a while now is minimalism and its recent popularity, particularly amongst younger people, amongst millennials and Gen Zs. I understand that minimalism is absolutely not a new philosophy. It is not something my generation made up. It's not something my culture made up. So before anybody lambastes me, yes, I totally understand that there are ancient origins from other cultures where minimalism as a principle has existed for centuries. But what I'm really referring to is this specific new resurgence that's happened in the last 5 to 10 years amongst people like myself and maybe like you if you're watching this video, who have made a conscientious effort to start to own less and live more simply. And one question that keeps popping up into my brain is why? Why all of a sudden has this become such an appealing way to live? I've thought about it, I've read about it, I've watched a lot of YouTube videos about it, and I've come to the conclusion that there are 7 main reasons why younger people, I struggle with the fact that I am maybe not that much of a young people anymore. But why has minimalism suddenly become such a popular thing amongst people like us? Why has it become such an appealing way to live our lives? Let's talk about it. The first reason I've come up with is probably the most obvious one, and it's for financial reasons. Millennials are the most overeducated and underpaid generation to date. I mean, maybe not me, because I never went to university, and honestly, I kind of slept my way through high school too. But on average, we are more educated than any generation to ever exist since the beginning of time, and we are experiencing some of the highest rates of income disparity to ever exist as well. Bachelor degrees are the new high school diplomas. Everybody has one. They've become essentially meaningless, and there are now people going into 5 or even 6 figures worth of student debt, all to land jobs that can barely even pay their bills. While minimalism is a lot more deep-rooted than just saving money, it is one of the big perks of it. Embracing a more financially minimalist-friendly lifestyle can allow you to save money in many ways by trimming all the excess out of your life and really zoning in on the things that are most important to you. And unfortunately for a lot of us, that's become a necessity whether or not we want to. Embracing a simple lifestyle, cutting down on your needs and wants, and minimizing your spending wherever possible can be one of the only ways to make sure that you can actually have a roof over your head and food in your stomach. And it's unfortunate, but that's just the truth. Our parents' generation came from a time where a single income, which didn't even require a degree, could support an entire family and get a single family home and a car on the driveway and all of the things that are part of the American dream, so to speak. And that's just not our reality anymore. Most of us are lucky to be able to have a car that is totally paid off, or to be able to pay rent, let alone own a house, and certainly not on one income. And so despite many of us adopting a minimalist lifestyle by choice and because we enjoy it and because we want to, the fact is that a lot of us really don't have much of another choice where our money is concerned. The second idea that popped into my mind when I was considering the recent popularity of minimalism is that social media has been a huge driver of this aesthetic. Instagram and Pinterest and YouTube and really all of the social media platforms nowadays are just completely plastered in this aesthetic, this perfectly curated spaces with these beautiful bright white walls and the Scandinavian style furniture, the mixtures of dark metals and neutral woods and plants, and the aesthetic is undeniably appealing. It's, in my opinion at least, it's pretty, it's beautiful, it's relaxing, it's understimulating, which I think is a good thing in a world where we are so constantly overstimulated all the time. Is understimulating even a word? Calming. Calming is the word I'm looking for. And so as a result, despite the fact that minimalism, especially to me, is a lot more than a design aesthetic, I find that I really do gravitate towards that aesthetic as well, and I'm definitely not the only one. The next point I want to bring up is one that ties a lot into the first one, which is space. A lot of us grew up in homes where we had 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, a living room, and a dining room, and with the increased cost of living, that is just not the reality for most of us anymore. Nowadays, we're finding more and more people living in tiny living accommodations. Things like micro apartments, storage shed homes, RVs, van life have all become so popular, sometimes by necessity, sometimes by choice. But when you're living in a smaller space, it becomes essential that you have fewer things. If you're living in 500 square feet, you're not going to have much in the way of storage space, you're not going to have much in the way of excess, and if you want to keep your place from looking like a complete hoarder's den, you're going to have to pare down on your belongings. As we progress through this video, you might start to get the feeling that a lot of these points that we discuss are interconnected, and you're absolutely not wrong. And with that in mind, the fourth reason that I've come up with as to why minimalism has become so popular amongst younger people today is because the vast majority of them are renting their home instead of owning. Again, this ties into the financial aspect, but with things so expensive, home ownership in particular being so out of reach for most people, people are renting for longer than ever before. It seemed that for our parents' generation, most people only rented an apartment up until about the time that they got married. And most people got married by the time that they were in their late 20s, if not even earlier. And so it was very normal to be kind of in your forever home that you owned by the time you were 30 years old, and you were just living happily ever after. And again, with the income disparity and the high cost of living and the low pay that we're all seeing nowadays, that's just not the reality for most people. So most people are renting for a lot longer than they otherwise would. And some people are even going to wind up being renters for life. Now that's not inherently a bad thing, but there is absolutely a level of permanence that comes with home ownership that does not come along with renting. Moving when you own a home is a lot more complicated than it is when you're just renting your place. And so for many reasons, I think that people who rent generally move a lot more often. Sometimes it's by choice. Sometimes they get sick of the place that they're living and they take advantage of the fact that they're not tied down to it for any long period of time and they can just get up and leave. Sometimes there are landlord issues, which causes them to have to move out even if they don't want to. And sometimes it just becomes about affordability and rent prices increasing and having to go find somewhere less expensive to live. But when you're renting a place and you know deep down that that's not going to be your forever home, I think it makes a lot of sense to try to live lightly, to try to minimize your stuff, knowing that whether it's in 6 weeks, 6 months, or 6 years, you're going to be moving. And when you move, the less stuff you have, the easier it is. And so if you are renting for the long term, or at least for the foreseeable future, it makes perfect sense to me that you want to pare down on your belongings so that when you do have to leave, it's not as much of a hassle as it otherwise would be. One of the ideas that is absolutely central to minimalism is the idea of less but better, meaning owning fewer things but owning higher quality, better things. Things that are actually worth the money that you're spending, things that are going to last longer and suit you better. This can apply to pretty much anything you spend money on, from ditching junk food in favor of whole food, healthy ingredients, to ditching fast fashion in favor of higher end clothing that's going to last longer and get you more bang for your buck. Again, there's absolutely a financial aspect of it, but there's more to it than that as well. By saying no to cheap, mass-produced, low-quality products, we're using our dollars to vote for the things that we want to see and shunning the things that we don't, and in turn, we're getting higher quality items for it. Personally, I'd rather own one sweater that fits perfectly, is super comfortable, and lasts a really long time than to own 5 that are trashy and garbage that I'm gonna have to throw out in a year from now because they're worn out. And so by adopting this more intentional, this less but better philosophy into our shopping habits, not only are we able to vote with our dollars for the things that we want to see more of, but we're just able to own nicer things, and who doesn't want to own nicer things? And this point leads into the next as well, which is environmentalism. Environmentalism is a big thing that I don't think most of our parents ever thought about or probably even heard of when they were our age. The baby boomer generation was so unbelievably wasteful. It seems like almost every product that they invented and popularized was just disposable. We're talking single-use water bottles, Ziploc bags, coffee pods, all the stuff that was literally designed to be thrown out after seconds of use. It's like none of them even considered the environmental implications, and maybe it's because they just didn't know better. Maybe I'm giving them more credit than they deserve. We've all seen the video of the turtle with the straw stuck up his nose. We've all seen the fish that are stuck in 6-pack holders. We've seen what happens to all of the stuff that winds up in the garbage and in the landfill. We've seen how it impacts the environment, the animals, and ourselves. For the first time in recorded history, our generation is the first who's expected to live shorter lives than our parents. And it's because of the climate. It's because of the increasingly uninhabitable environments that we're creating for ourselves through all of this waste. When I was in middle school, we had this assembly, this presentation one day, and it's always stuck with me because I found it to be really profound. It was about recycling or something like that, where none of us were really paying attention, but the person presenting made a really, really interesting point, where she said, everything that you buy will become trash, and everything that had value to you in one moment will be worthless to you in another. Basically, everything you own at some point is going to get crushed into a cube and thrown into the landfill, and all of the resources and time and money that went into manufacturing and shipping and using those products, it's all gone. And of course, there's things that we need, and some of that is inevitable, and it's not like you can live with nothing. It's not like you can't ever own anything or purchase anything ever again. It's just not possible. But by treading a little lighter and being a little bit more intentional, we can hopefully mitigate a lot of the damage that we would otherwise be causing. And finally, the 7th reason, the last reason that I have found that young people are so attracted to minimalism is because we have seen our parents clutter, and it scares the shit out of us. You know, there's that meme, we've probably all seen it, I'll put it right here if not, that little cartoon of like a garage full of garbage and it says, son, one day all of this will be yours. We've all seen how much stuff our parents have, and one day it's gonna be our problem, and we don't want it to be. The special dishes for special occasions, the couch that you were never allowed to actually sit on, all of the knickknacks and collectibles and junk, it's junk, and unfortunately our parents spent their hard-earned money on it, and it's gonna wind up in the landfill like I was just saying. But not only that, it's overwhelming to think about. You know, unfortunately, there's gonna come a time for most of us that we are gonna have to deal with our parents' death. And that's something, I don't wanna get too morbid here, but it's something I think about a lot, and it's really upsetting. and it's stressful to think about, it's stressful to know that you can't avoid it. The only thing that's gonna make that even worse is the fact that after they're gone, you have to deal with all of this shit, and you have to deal with this guilt of knowing that you don't want it, you don't have any use for it, but that it was important to them, and are you just gonna throw it out now, or what are you gonna do with it? And I think that a lot of us have just made the decision that we don't want to be in that position. We don't want to put our kids in that position if we have them. And we just realize how unnecessary most of that stuff is at the end of the day. If your house is full of stuff that you never use, what's the point in even having any of it? And so all of that is to say that between us being broke and over indebted and underpaid and frustrated and living in shoeboxes and overwhelmed by all of the stuff in the world, a lot of us have just decided that minimalism makes sense. That it is so much easier to live with less than it is to live with more. That the more intentional we are, the better our lives are, and the more chance we have at improving them even further. But all of this is just my 2 cents. These are my shower thoughts. This is where my brain goes at 2 o'clock in the morning when I should be sleeping, and I would love to know your thoughts. I would love to know if you agree or disagree with the points that I made, if you think there's anything that I forgot. Drop me a comment down below and let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. Follow me on Instagram, all of that good stuff. Other than that, thank you guys so much as always for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you next week.